Hi, good evening. I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. I'm reviving it for the EU referendum, so there's some really important things that are exercising me quite a lot at the moment about the EU referendum, and I'm absolutely definitely in favour of a leave vote, and there are many reasons why I want that, not least of which is the completely unaccountable and unelected autocracy, the tyranny of the EU rulership. But I'll maybe go into that in another one. But the immediate effect of the authoritarian government, which is ruling us from Brussels at the moment, threatens us with the most immediate issue that we would have to think about very soon after the result came in, if we decided to stay, and that is the issue of Turkey and the access of Turkish citizens to the EU, and with its open borders inside the Schengen zone, to Britain, the United Kingdom, all parts of it. David Cameron himself said some time ago that he wanted to pave the way between London and, or maybe it was Brussels and Istanbul. And then I saw a very interesting clip that he said a little while later. He said, "Are you worried about Turkey? Don't think about it." He's like some kind of new age person who says, you know, if you stop thinking about things, they cease to exist. Well, I'm very concerned about it, and I'm not going to stop thinking about Turkey, because Turkey has an extremely long history of unwelcome intentions towards Europe, and just because we don't know much about it here in the remote northwest, far away from the Bosphorus and all the world of the Middle East that Turkey is a part of, well, countries like Hungary and Austria and Poland and Bulgaria and Greece, well, Greece is a bit of a complicated issue, but the whole of the Balkan and the Black Sea states all have a very long history with aggression from the former Turkish Empire, the Ottomans. We really have to remember that Islam, under various regimes, has been attacking Europe since the early 7th century. The jihad during the life of Muhammad started about 620, 625, just in the small desert kingdoms of Arabia, and then after he died, in I believe it was 632, the jihad was spread all the way along the North African coast, parts of the Middle East. It spread up through Spain into France, the famous Battle of Tours, by where Charles Martel in I think it was 732 or thereabouts defeated and sent back the armies of the jihad, although it did take the Spanish another 700 or 800 years to remove them all from Spain. This was followed by attacks on the eastern part of the Roman Empire, Constantinople, during the Dark Ages, around about the time of the Normans, raiding by Islamic pirates in the Mediterranean made trade very difficult, and the coastal areas of the Mediterranean became less populated, and the medieval economy was severely damaged as a result of it. The Crusades, of course, were just a reaction after several hundred years of predation by the Islamic Jihad. The Crusades were instigated by Pope Urban II in 1095. They'd only been having about 400 years of predation against European Christendom before the Crusades were set off, and unfortunately they weren't really that successful. They managed to maintain a Crusader kingdom for about 150 or so years. before another jihad defeated it and took it all back into the hands of Islamic rule. And then the Islamic jihad in the Middle East continued until the caliphate was extended to cover what we now know as Turkey, which was all Roman, under the Byzantine Empire, until the Byzantine Empire was finally defeated. The great and ancient city of Constantinople was taken by the Turks in 1453, and they proceeded for the next 200 and odd years or so to make wars in the Balkans, occupying parts of Bulgaria up to Romania, Austria, Hungary, and they were finally cast back from the gates of Vienna in the year of 1683, after only what's that, 1,050 years of battle against European civilization since the time of Muhammad. But nonetheless, even though they were driven back from Austria, they still maintained enclaves in the Balkans, some of which still exist, Albania, parts of Bosnia, then the Turkish Ottoman Empire, which was one of the cruelest and most tyrannical in history, gradually declined, and as the rise of European power in the 18th and 19th century, it declined, and it was allied to the wrong side in the First World War, although it was also responsible for the infamous episode of the Dardanelles. But anyway, the Ottoman Empire was finally defeated and dismembered in 1918, and under the Treaty of Versailles and the following arrangements, the empire was dismembered, but Turkey itself was able to maintain control of the European side of the Bosphorus, retaining Istanbul and not returning it to Greece or Bulgaria, as many hoped that it would be restored to become Constantinople. This was a great betrayal, and I don't know why our people from Europe, the Allies, allowed this to happen, but their successors in the present European Union, the leaders of Europe, seem to have forgotten this hundreds of years of predation, attrition, war, which Turkey has made on European civilization for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, almost incessantly since the 7th century, which is like nearly 1400 years ago when they started this. And yet the EU is keen to fast track Turkey into the EU, allow visa free access, and I was telling people that I'd read this on a what you might call a fringe news website a few weeks ago, and people would say, oh no, it'll never happen. In fact, I got into a conversation with a young chap on the bus the other night, and he said, no, it'll never happen. And then 24 hours later, a friend of mine sends me a link to a breaking story on the Sunday Times, which was published this morning, about secret negotiations which have been taking place to allow Turkey access to the EU and eventually fast track it into the EU, allowing, well, untold numbers really of Turks, people who have 98% of their country are Muslims. Their president, Erdogan, has been acting very, very aggressively towards Europe. First of all, demanding billions of euros, I should say, to stem the tide of illegal migrants, 80% of whom have nothing to do with Syria or being refugees, and a very large number of whom are, of course, young men of fighting age who, if they are Syrian, should probably have some loyalty to their country and stay back there and do something to help the situation, because there are safe zones within Syria as well as within Turkey, and the EU's been paying for a lot of these people to be kept in safe areas of refugee camps in these countries. But Erdogan is not satisfied. He's been saying that he will flood us and outbreed us. I was speaking to my one of my local councillors just the other day, and he was actually aware of this. It's not been entirely suppressed by the mainstream media. So we have a historic great power that has behind it a ruthless ideology that has existed for even longer than that power, and together they have designs on Europe. And all our European leaders can do is tell us that we shouldn't worry about it. It's all nothing to worry about. They're perfectly all right, even though most of these people are illiterate, or certainly illiterate in European languages. And surveys have found that a very large number of these people would very much like to come and live in Europe, if not in Britain itself. And well, I can't really blame them given the opportunity, but it's irresponsible on the part of the EU leaders such as Merkel, Hollande, Juncker, all this lot, who basically want to destroy all boundaries and allow complete free movement around the globe amongst our own nations. And it seems to me to be an absolute recipe for complete dissolution of our civilization. And then while I was thinking about preparing for this video this evening, I was watching stuff on Twitter unfold about the Orlando incident, which has just happened. An Islamic terrorist has killed about 50 people or more, and injured another 50, I believe. And just like we have all over Europe people saying, oh well, it's not the people who we say it is, we should just blame guns for firing, or we should blame the young women in Cologne who were sexually molested for wearing clothes that don't conform to Islamic codes. And all the way, everywhere, we're being expected to yield, submit to Islamic values. And Turkey is the principal threat that is presented to us about this at the moment. Oh, well, of course, Turkey also, of course, aided ISIS, and they're generally pretty much of messing around with things in the Middle East. I mean, these are people who are consider they want to increase their position in the power hierarchy around the world, and they're very unsafe, aggressive people. So anyway, this is my video about why we should, if it doesn't become apparent by now, the purpose of this video is to urge people to vote leave the EU on the 23rd, which is just about 11 days away now. This is a vital decision. This is the most important decision that probably anybody will take in their lifetimes. It will have consequences which may not be reversible for many decades as we step into, or if we remain in a world which is becoming ever more controlled by a centralised bureaucracy who is clearly intent upon flooding Europe with unlimited numbers of Muslims from Islamic countries and making us vulnerable to Islamic terror, and the whole purpose behind this is clearly to dilute our civilization, obviously cheap labour from migrants, but also to destroy the values of our civilization and make it completely malleable to the big corporations. So I would urge you to reject all of this and seek to regain our destiny, regain our sovereignty, vote leave, and prevent the demographic invasion of millions of Turks and Middle Eastern Muslims who will only destabilise and do harm to the fabric of our society here in Britain. So please vote leave, and thank you very much for watching my video blog, and I'll have some more coming at you quite soon. Thank you. Hi, good evening. I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. I'm reviving it for the EU referendum, so there's some really important things that are exercising me quite a lot at the moment about the EU referendum, and I'm absolutely definitely in favour of a leave vote, and there are many reasons why I want that, not least of which is the completely unaccountable and unelected autocracy, the tyranny of the EU rulership. But I'll maybe go into that in another one. But the immediate effect of the authoritarian government which is ruling us from Brussels at the moment threatens us with the most immediate issue that we would have to think about very soon after the result came in, if we decide remote northwest, far away from the Bosphorus and all the world of the Middle East that Turkey is a part of. Well, countries like Hungary and Austria and Poland and Bulgaria and Greece, well, Greece is a bit of a complicated issue, but the whole of the Balkan and the Black Sea states all have a very long history with aggression from the former Turkish Empire, the Ottomans, decided to stay, and that is the issue of Turkey and the access of Turkish citizens to the EU, and with its open borders inside the Schengen zone, to Britain, the United Kingdom, all parts of it. David Cameron himself said some time ago that he wanted to pave the way between London and, or maybe it was Brussels and Istanbul. And then I saw a very interesting clip that he said a little while later. He said, "Are you worried about Turkey? Don't think about it." He's like some kind of new age person who says, you know, if you stop thinking about things, they cease to exist. Well, I'm very concerned about it, and I'm not going to stop thinking about Turkey, because Turkey has an extremely long history of unwelcome intentions towards Europe, and just because we don't know much about it here in the